Hey everyone, welcome to Insights with Benny, a space where ideas meet action, where stories inspire reflection, and perspectives challenge the status quo. Whether you're here for clarity, challenge, or quiet wisdom, this is your place. Today's episode is titled, A Leadership Journey from the Hinterlands. From dusty roads to boardroom breakthroughs. Discover how a journey through Africa's hinterlands taught me the true meaning of leadership, resilience, and transformation. As always, these are straight from the heart of Insights blog. Let's begin. Lessons in Leadership. Part 1. Some journeys begin with a clear map and a precise destination. Others begin with an SUV, a new TomTom GPS, and an address on a notepad. Mine began with the latter. When I joined Rayabana National Institute, I thought I was stepping into just another job. A role that looked glamorous on paper, a chance to make a difference from behind a desk perhaps. But what awaited me was far more complex. I wasn't stepping into a position. I was driving headfirst into the raw, unpredictable heart of leadership, complete with its trials, conflicts, and lessons that would stretch far beyond what any leadership school could teach. A mosaic of struggles and dreams. Rayabana isn't your typical organization. It is not the typical organization contained neatly in a head office with polished floors, high-visibility display screens, and tidy spreadsheets. No, it is a living, breathing puzzle of over 200 organizations, scattered across distant landscapes. Some struggling to carve out space in a world that was changing faster than they could keep up. Others adapting swiftly and soaring ahead, as if the winds were made for them. Some of the organizations operated from sleek office complexes with modern facilities, while others made do in rundown buildings with barely functional amenities. A few operated from makeshift spaces tucked behind dusty roads, and some held their meetings beneath the open sky, their only conference room defined by shade and shared resolve. On paper, my role was straightforward. Engage these organizations, assess their needs, offer support, but life, as I quickly learned, never unfolds neatly on paper. Long road trips became my new normal. I'd punch an address into my GPS, book a B&B based on a couple of glowing reviews and blurry photos, and hit the open road. Sometimes the B&B was a delightful surprise, just like the pictures, maybe even better. Other times, well, let's just say the online photos had been very generous. It was like meeting someone from a dating app who looked great in their profile picture, only to realize over dinner that the photo was from 20 years ago. But those nights spent under mismatched linens or sharing stories with strangers over home-cooked meals became part of the tapestry of this adventure. I met people whose languages I couldn't speak, yet somehow we communicated through laughter, gestures, and through the universal language of shared purpose. There's something humbling about standing in front of a group, trying to explain a strategy with nothing but a smile, a few well-rehearsed words, and a lot of hope. But in those moments, we connected across language, race, culture, and experience. The rocky roads to connection. One trip, though, took me deeper than most. The road to the community was more suggestion than reality. A rough, unforgiving trail carved into the hillside, with ruts deep enough to swallow a tire whole. My SUV rattled and groaned in protest with every turn, lacking the suspension, the clearance, frankly, the courage for such a journey. We paused halfway, unsure whether to push on. The people joked we had two options: get a donkey or hike the rest of the way. The image of us riding a donkey in our urban wares felt too absurd not to laugh at, so we opted for the hike. It was long, grueling. The sun bore down mercilessly, and the dust clung to every inch of exposed skin. But somewhere along that uphill climb, with sweat streaking our faces and legs aching, something shifted. Walking those rocky paths made it impossible to ignore the barriers faced by the communities the organization served. The distance wasn't just physical, it was systemic, economic, cultural. And trudging through those hills, I couldn't just be a visitor. I became part of their struggle, if only for that day. And yet amidst the challenges, there was beauty. Startling, breathtaking beauty. The countrysides unfolded like a painting, rolling hills cloaked in green, sunrises that set the sky aflame, and sunsets that bathed the world in gold. There were moments when I stood on a ridge and watched the ocean kiss the horizon, waves rolling endlessly under a sky so vast it felt like possibility itself. Those scenes stayed with me. They reminded me why we do what we do, not just to solve problems, but to preserve the hope and the beauty that life, even in its toughest places, still holds. Cracks beneath the surface. But not all the cracks were in the roads. With each journey, it became clearer that Rhea Bana itself was fractured. Teams operated in silos, communication strained at best, non-existent at worst. Offices bristled with quiet resentment, alliances formed along fault lines of personal interest. Leadership structures stood in name only, titles without traction. It wasn't always malicious. Often, it was the silent grip of survival instincts. Change didn't come with a grand announcement or sweeping reforms. It came quietly, like whispers in the corridors, the uneasy exchanges over shared meals, the tired glances in team meetings that seemed to ask, is this really how it's meant to be? When the chance arose to lead an organizational turnaround effort, it wasn't a promotion for me. It was like standing at the edge of a crumbling bridge with no guarantee that the other side even existed. The board's support was minimal. Resources were lean. But conviction I had. And one more thing that mattered even more. A dear friend who believed in me. I've learned that in leadership, when the nights grow darkest and the weight feels unbearable, you don't need a crowd. You don't need unanimous approval. You just need one person. One person who sees what you see, who believes when belief feels foolish. That one voice in the darkness is worth more than 1,000 perfect plans. Brick by brick, rebuilding trust. The first task wasn't to draft extensive strategies. It was to rebuild trust, one conversation at a time. Transparency became our currency. Rumors gave way to periodic updates. Backdoor whisperings were replaced with open forums. We didn't ask people to buy into a grand vision. We built that vision together, brick by brick, with their hands as much as ours. Processes followed, not from handbooks, but from sheer necessity. Clear decisions, fast feedback loops, and relentless communication. This became the scaffolding that held us together. The chaos didn't vanish, but we learned to navigate through it, guided by a shared compass. Financially, the hard choices came, and they came fast. We trimmed expenses, but never at the cost of dignity. We renegotiated vendor contracts, scaled down bloated service agreements, and moved our offices to more modest, functional spaces that suited our needs without the unnecessary frills. Every line item in the budget was scrutinized, every cost justified. We cut down on waste, whether it was unused subscriptions, redundant processes, or inefficient systems, redirecting those resources to what mattered most. The goal wasn't just to survive, it was to ensure that every amount spent aligned with our mission and kept the heart of the organization beating strong. We focused on initiatives that mattered the most, the ones that paid the bills, and, more importantly, the ones that rekindled our collective sense of purpose as an organization. Meetings with partners and stakeholders shifted from polished, rehearsed pitches to raw, honest conversations. Surprisingly, honesty sold better than perfection ever could. Vulnerability became our strength, not our weakness. The resistance and the resolve. Not everyone embraced the changes. Some resisted openly, others silently. But the path remained the same. Listen deeply, act decisively. Compassion stood beside firmness. Where necessary, we help people find their exits with grace, acknowledging that not every journey continues on the same path. There were nights when doubt gnawed at me, nights when walking away seemed like the sane choice. But in those moments, I remembered the roads, the dusty trails, the mountain hikes, the mismatched B&Bs. They had taught me something no leadership seminar ever could, which is that resilience is not a skill, it is a decision you make, one uncertain mile at a time. Turning the tide. And then slowly, almost imperceptibly, the cracks began to mend. At first, it was just a shift in tone. The guarded silence that once filled staff meetings gave way to tentative voices, testing the waters of trust. Staff and board members who had once counted down the days to the office's closing, who had mentally packed their bags, began speaking about new ideas and fresh possibilities. They no longer just showed up. They had a purpose. Conversations that once revolved around how much longer we can hold on shifted toward what's next and how do we make it better. I remember when a long-standing board member, who was previously skeptical about everything, started offering suggestions, not critiques, but solutions. It wasn't grand, but it was a sign. The ice was breaking. Externally, the shift echoed. Partners who had hovered at arm's length, watching and waiting for signs of collapse, began leaning in. First came emails, then phone calls laced with curiosity rather than skepticism. One partner, who had all but written us off, asked for a meeting. That conversation led to a renewed funding stream, modest but symbolic. Trust was returning. Hope, once a fragile ember buried beneath layers of cynicism and fatigue, began to glow. You could feel it in the energy of the team, the way laughter crept back into the meetings. People began celebrating small wins, a successfully delivered projects, a positive testimonial, and a new partnership formed. But importantly, there wasn't a single defining moment when everything turned around. No banner in the sky, no dramatic announcement. Instead, there were hundreds of small moments, each one adding another stone to the foundation beneath our feet. A candid conversation where grievances were aired, a courageous decision that prioritized people over money, a partner willing to take a chance again. Each moment reinforced the next, creating a ripple effect that spread quietly but steadily through the organization. One day we looked up and realized we weren't just surviving anymore. We were moving forward. Initiatives that had been stagnant revived. Members who had once withdrawn now opted to be part of the system. The narrative had changed, not just what we said about ourselves, but what others said about us. We hadn't just mended the cracks. We had rebuilt the walls, stronger and more resilient. And in doing so, we found not only organizational recovery, but a renewed sense of who we were and why we existed. The road worth taking. Looking back, what began as a job became a journey, one that didn't just lead to organizational recovery, but to personal transformation. Leadership, I learned, isn't about titles or authority. It's about walking the rough roads, standing in the uncomfortable spaces, and choosing again and again not to give up. It's not the easiest path or the most popular one, but for those brave enough to walk it, every mile shapes you in ways comfort never could. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Share them on social and tag me with #LeadershipJourney. Please subscribe to my channels. Like, share, and help spread the message. Until next time, stay reflective.